aliens beings that are believed to have had a critical impact on humanity since ancient times. We have not been able to prove their existence in a real sense, but we have been able to make sense of the world with their vehicles, which we call UFOs, objects that we cannot identify in cave paintings, and many other places. They are thought to have visited the world many times. Moreover, it is stated by a considerable number of people that these visits were not an ordinary visit and that they took humanity one step further with each visit. The reason behind the belief of a certain group of people in this direction is that people living in ancient times depicted non-human-like beings in cave paintings, archaeological researches, ancient painters included flying round objects in some parts of their paintings. And the fact that many videos of flying generations, true or false, are circulating on the internet today is shown as the biggest factor in this. Apart from this, the recent emergence of UFO theorists and statements that we have been in contact with extraterrestrial beings increase the dose of this belief a little more. But do aliens really exist? And have they really intervened to change the fate of humanity? Let's start our video. The universe is a vast, uncharted expanse with black holes in it. It is an immense structure that contains galaxies, planets, and many other unknown things. Within a very small part of this structure, the Milky Way galaxy, the only place where life exists is Earth. Or as we know it. It would be better to ask a question like this: were all the other galaxies and planets in the universe created for nothing? I don't think so. The idea that we are alone in the whole universe? I don't believe it. Without further ado, let's go back in time. Let's take a look at the first time it touched human beings and the current state of affairs. Let's try to explain the subject scientifically and archaeologically without getting too religious. Humanity has continued to develop slowly since prehistoric times. Something extraordinary happened for human beings who had survived by hunting and gathering food. Humanity began to develop very rapidly. In a relatively short period of time. From the Stone Age to deep space. So what was it that accelerated our development so much? The history of Homo sapiens, the rational thinking human being, has been dated back 300 and 350,000 years in the latest research. According to some archaeologists, it even goes back as far as 500,000 years. In these times of the Stone Age, some things were unrealizable for human beings. One of them was a piece of metal found in Romania in the 1970s. When this piece was examined, it was more than 250,000 years old and consisted of 90% aluminum. Moreover, the production technology of this metal was not remotely related to the technology in the world. The stone state of this object, which was clearly not produced with today's technology, was very interesting. Because humans had only begun to process aluminum 200 years ago. Another important discovery was made in China. Caves were found under some lake beds in China. And these caves were lined with pipes. These pipes, called pipes, varied in size but also showed signs of radioactivity. On the shore of the lake where the pipes were found, researchers announced that they had discovered structures. Even more interesting was the fact that these pipes were not made by humans. The pipes, thought to be at least 150,000 years old, were extremely long. At that time, there was no technology to process metal into pipes. The case was further complicated by the fact that there was no trace of human life in the areas where the pipes were found. 148,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, which is accepted as Christ, the pipes still remain a mystery. Doesn't the earliest evidence suggest that there was a preparation? A preparation that will affect humanity. Is it good or bad? We'll find out in the rest of the video. Coincidentally, it was during this period of time that man, who had not been able to move forward for a long time, became conscious of his science, and his 1.5 kilogram brain began to work like no other being in the world. What he saw no longer stayed with him and was transmitted somewhere. In addition to the works of art he painted in the caves where he lived, he also began to paint the extraterrestrials he came into contact with. Alien beings that changed the fate of humanity. The oldest known example of man-made cave painting 73,000 years ago, it appeared in a cave in South Africa. Whether it is a symbol or part of a larger painting is still under investigation. But there are also alien paintings in caves in Peru, Uzbekistan, Nepal, Egypt, Mexico, North America, Italy, Iraq, Ecuador, Australia and Africa, dating back approximately 15,000 years. The fact that there was no writing is of great importance in terms of obtaining information from the past, as people living at that time collected their relations with the beings they encountered by drawing them in caves or on various objects. In this historical interval, people who have reached the consciousness of science 23,000 years ago, in the region called the Fertile Crescent, they took an extraordinary step and transitioned to an agricultural society. Or it was made to do so. As a result, settled life began. Religious teachings emerged. Temples were built, small cities, and then great civilizations were founded. And the fate of humanity changed in a way that will never be the same again. I was going to say that the most important development of the knowing man began 5,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. We can say that the discovery of Göbekli demolished all history theses. Let's dwell on this for a while. Because this place contains information that can be a turning point where important touches for humanity took place. 12,000 years ago, during the Stone Age, a magnificent architectural structure was built in the Göbekli region of Sanliurfa. Similar structures were built in other regions much later in the same time period as Göbekli. And they were not as elaborate as this one according to the researches. It is not thought that people in the Stone Age period were capable of creating such an architectural structure. This architectural structure is described by archaeologists as the largest temple in the world. There are many figures engraved on the stones unearthed. In fact, the figures and symbols found in this region are the weak of other civilizations that will emerge in the future. Let's talk about them in a different video. I mentioned that this architectural structure is a temple. What did people worship at a time when there were no Abrahamic religions? There was no religion. But worship rituals were practiced here. In the findings, all the temples were facing south. Right where the constellation and the star Orion, that these stars played an important role in later civilizations as well. It was precisely in this region that people worshipped. They gave thanks to extraterrestrials who came from the sky and helped them. Although current research indicates that there is no possibility of life on the star, the mystery of life in that region will still leave a question mark in minds. Moving on, the Sumerian tablets provide us with a very striking piece of information about the transition to an agricultural society. In the legend and the texts mentioned in the Sumerian tablets, the discovery of agriculture took place in Dakota, and agriculture and animal husbandry were passed down to their ancestors. It is said to be a gift from the gods, that is, extraterrestrials. I wonder if these legendary texts originated in the Göbekli temple. People were forced to move to an agricultural society and an order was tried to be established. The first step in this order was time. In order for people to organize agriculture, the time of the crops to be grown had to be known. This concept resulted in beings coming from the sky and pointing people to the sky for a solution. People found the calendar by looking up in the sky at the constellations. You can call them the 12 signs of the zodiac or the 12 constellations. They found the calendar by looking at the sky. The path of these constellations, which is assumed to have originated in China, Babylon or India. Again the navel falls on the hill. How do we understand this? From the 12 stones surrounding the two sterilized T-shaped obelisks in the middle. The number 12 is a special number in terms of mythology and history of religions. I'm thinking of making a video on this too. In fact, people before the celestial religions should never be fed by religion or philosophy. People at that time used astronomy and the mythology that came out of it. Civilizations after Göbekli were also interested in astronomy. The rest of the video will touch on these civilizations. So how did people learn astronomy at that time? In the Stone Age, people lived very, very ordinary lives. Who gave them this high-level information? Don't you think the answer is obvious? With Göbekli, humanity raised the bar once again. But this was not enough. Humanity needed to upgrade 5,000 years ago. The foundations for this were laid in ancient Egypt. People put nails in stone and began to write. The Sumerians also first used pictograms called ideograms, similar to this type of writing. Then he found and used cuneiform writing. The device of keeping records gave birth to history, and a knowing human being, who had made only a plus-length cognitive progress for 300,000 years, suddenly started keeping records 5,000 years ago and shot out of his bow like an arrow. Now let's go back to ancient Egypt. The concept of Tariqa was used a lot in ancient Egypt. It was a polytheistic civilization where the most important gods were in the heavens. Astronomy was highly developed in ancient Egypt. Their gods in the sky were the stars, the sun and the moon. We see these in their symbols. And they built pyramids for their gods in the sky. On a gigantic scale. We have seen many of these pyramids and similar structures in many different parts of the world. This may seem simple to you now. The common view of the purpose of the pyramids is that the pharaohs believed that they would be resurrected after death, or they would be spared from famine. However, since there are pyramid structures in many different regions and there is no theme of famine or resurrection after death in these regions, this thesis loses its validity today. The mystery of the Egyptian pyramids is still not completely solved. Some researchers, such as John Anthony Best, Graham, believe that the constellation Orion in Sirius had a significant influence on the construction of the famous Sphinx, Khephren and Mycerinos pyramids in Giza. But now there are newly unearthed documents of an old research. The KGB, the Intelligence and Secret Service of the Soviet Union, conducted this research. The KGB investigated the Kos pyramid and came up with some very striking information. Let's look at these details. The KGB has conducted a detailed investigation into whether the Pyramid of the Ages is a paranormal machine. In the report, an unnamed scientist claims that the Pyramid of Cheops, whose dimensions are extremely unique, could be some kind of machine. The documents note that the ratio between the height and the circumference of the pyramid is equivalent to the ratio of the radius and the circumference of the Earth. The documents therefore state that the pyramids are a three-dimensional representation of the hemisphere. And the idea has been put forward that it may have the power to metamorphose the cosmic winter. Some scientists believe that the pyramids are a product of extraterrestrial engineering and create a kind of energy. Scientific reports suggest that all the monuments in the tomb city of Giza, which is connected to the main control center located inside the pyramid. Inside the pyramid, there is a corridor leading to the country room and a tunnel above the lasin called Star Xin. When celestial bodies align in a certain way, starlight is reflected in this tunnel. Scientists believe that this event, which they call energy, triggers an energy similar to the cold fusion reaction in the secular world. It should be noted that the documents revealed will be published as a documentary in the coming days. It is an acceptable theory by many that these pyramids, which still contain a great mystery, were built by aliens for a great purpose. Unraveling the mystery of the past is still a great riddle. As we move towards the present day, we continue with the Sumerian state. The state that actually invented writing and of course those marvelous tablets. The Sumerians, like ancient Egypt, gave the impression of a civilization far ahead of its time. Their discovery and recording of writing accelerated the development of humanity considerably. They had very advanced knowledge, especially in astronomy. In those times, the solar system was accurately depicted, the rotation times of the ECHR and the planets were calculated, and they made advances in many other areas. Much of the knowledge we know today was discovered, defined and recorded at that time. The tablets of the Sumerians, of which there is no doubt, have created a completely different atmosphere all over the world. Extraterrestrials are interestingly described in these tablets. I'm not going to talk here about the story of the four-head archaeological, I'm going to talk about the story of the extraterrestrials and the narratives on the tablets that they helped them to develop. You can take a look at my other videos on this subject. I am adding the links in the description section. In fact, the view that the Sumerians were polytheistic is dominant. But in the Sumerian tablet called Sarkba, it is stated that God is one. It is clear that the gods mentioned are extraterrestrial beings. Since the Sumerians did not define extraterrestrials as aliens, they may have seen fit to give them a divine name and describe them in this way. What is interesting in these tablets is that the gods who help people do so in order to benefit from them. It is described that these beings, who explored to save their own planet, discovered the earth and developed humans to extract the gold here. This is why the beings the Sumerians referred to as gods are alien beings. The information in the tablets has mobilized many alien theorists and many scenarios have been written. To give an interesting fact, the Sumerians, the source of the symbols of the Sumerians actually goes back to Göbekli. While we think that civilization started with the Sumerians, everything had already started in Göbekli. Now let's take a look at the Maya civilization. Unlike the Sumerian state established in Mesopotamia, in Mexico, much information has been uncovered about the Maya, an extraordinary civilization. Among the many artifacts uncovered were Mayan scripts, also known as Maya, an advanced form of written communication. The Mayan civilization was extremely advanced in many fields, including astrology, mathematics, agriculture, biology, physics, chemistry, and construction. In April 2006, Mayan researcher and cryptologist Davi Stord deciphered the writings of the artifact known as Monument No. 6. The translated inscription was found to contain additional information to the Mayan calendar, which ends on December 21, 2012. According to the inscription, the exact date of the beginning of the Mayan calendar is August 12, 3114 BC. But on this date the Mayans did not even exist yet. So why does the Mayan calendar start on this date? What is special about this date? Researchers looking for an answer to this question found it in the Chilan Balam, the Book of the Jaguar Priests. According to the book, on August 12, 3114 BC, the Star Gate was opened where the Great Pyramid of the Mayans stands today, and alien beings called gods came to the world through this gate. This answer was confirmed in June 2014 by the precise decipherment by Altendag No. 7 after 6 years of work. It was also mentioned that in the Great Pyramid where the Mayan rituals were held, there was a special mechanism by which they spoke to the gods. It is said that for the mechanism to work, there is a code hidden in the algorithm of the Mayan calendar. In addition, the Mayans, with their inscriptions, wall paintings, reliefs and statuettes they were able to transmit the information they received from alien gods, such as the ones you see in the pictures you see now. They have successfully depicted the tools they use and many other behaviors. It seems that extraterrestrials not only visited many regions, but also taught similar knowledge to the regions they visited. According to another view of the Mayans, the inhabitants of this civilization are descendants of the lost continent of Atlantis. The remarkable development of ancient civilizations was the result of human ego. And mankind has since then been engaged in wars and gaining territory and destroying ancient knowledge of the past. And it slowed down its progress. After Christ, it was as if all knowledge disappeared, as if humanity was starting from scratch. Progress has been stalled. But some famous painters made very important paintings whose value was only realized with time. These paintings, when analyzed in detail, contained very important information. Extraterrestrials have not abandoned us and have continued to visit us over time. At least that's what we see in the pictures. Here are some of these pictures. Eric von Daniken said that the reason extraterrestrials don't appear out of nowhere is that they don't want to create chaos. If people suddenly encountered these beings, it would shake the whole established order and people's beliefs. The perception that the visits took place in secrecy becomes highly probable.